Hello, Lunita. It's such a pleasure to have you on and to chat about what life has been like for you on this healing journey. I'm so happy you're here, spending some time with me and with our listeners today. So thank you.
Thanks for inviting me.
So Lunita and I met at an in-person apprenticeship called Medicine Mandala back in 2017. And we were just chatting a few moments before we came on about the celebration and how full circle it's been since that time that we spent together in San Diego, and how revealing it was and how fucking hard it was. And how it was all the things over the course of a year. So we took part in ceremony together, gathering on the land. We took part in some ancestral teachings, journeying through some plant medicine together. And so we've stayed in touch over the years and have since reconnected through our love of somatic experiencing. And now Lunita is training to become a somatic experiencing practitioner. So I guess I kind of want to start there with my first question to you, Lunita. It's like, what made you decide to take the leap into this 3-year training?
Oh gosh, well, there's not a short answer
That's
to
all right,
that.
girl. You go.
Well, I guess we can start back to around 2017, and we were doing so much healing work, and a lot of it was through these mega medicine ceremonies. And I say mega because they were so profound, blasting my mind, my heart, kind of just really suddenly almost bringing up so much. It was like my eyelids got peeled open. Right. Like it's like I never know if it's the blue pill or the red pill, but I took the one that opens your eyes. and
Mm,
and it was profound and huge and cathartic and intense and messy and gnarly. It was everything. It was a full tower card moment, it was a death and a rebirth and so
mm,
much.
yeah.
And now I can look back on that time and be grateful for it. It was what I needed. I needed a intense catharsis to move me. It
Mm,
was like I didn't need a subtle approach. I
mm-hmm,
needed a immense wake the fuck up.
mm,
And so after a couple years of that work, some of it entwined with our apprenticeship, some was before. But after that, I realized through some elders, teachers, thankfully, not sugarcoating anything, looking me square in the eye and saying, "You are completely disembodied.
mm,
You need therapy. You need to integrate.
mm.
You need to integrate all the stuff that's swirling around
Yeah.
and bring it into your body and do some healing so that your sobriety can really take hold. Because during all this, I'm also sober from alcohol.
Mm,
So I started doing therapy, and I've been with my therapist for many years now. She's this incredibly wise, profound, intelligent, spiritual elder. So again, I went from these beautiful plants that gave me what I needed to meeting my psychotherapist, who's also an incredible spiritual being
mm,
and a psychotherapist. So it's like I kept getting what I needed, right? And so then there was many years of talk therapy,
yeah.
and that started to put the pieces in place. That started to kind of, there was these big lessons, and I was able to get the threads and tie them up and put them on the shelf and start to really make sense of everything and orient to everything and really see
Mm,
myself and my trauma and my wounding. And kind of, it's like in therapy, I would understand a ceremony from 4 years prior, right? And start to piece myself together, piece my mind, my heart,
mm,
forgive myself, forgive others, And then I realized, oh, okay, it's still in my head though.
Mm.
I'm still not fully in my body. Like I realized in a ceremony, in a practice, that I couldn't, I'm holding my belly and my womb right now. I
Mm.
couldn't feel that.
Mm.
You know, I had I've had traumatic birth, so I couldn't feel my womb.
Mm.
And then I said, okay, so I've spiritually done healing. I've mentally done healing. My soma, my body that has traversed all of this, has held all of this. What about her?
Mm.
And right around that time in my spiritual community, our teacher recommended some somatic experiencing, and I had never heard of that, but I said, you recommend it, I'm game. That sounds about right. You know,
Mm.
I knew what soma meant,
Yeah.
and I knew what experiencing meant. So okay, sign me up. And I started working with a practitioner in Ojai through Zoom, and it was still so profound. I
Mm.
mean, the first session, I forgave my father for my entire life of resentment in one session, and it stayed. Like that ceremony, I was able to have, feeling my father in my heart.
Mm.
In 1 hour session, I was able to see, feel, and move through the forgiveness that was necessary so that I could see my dad now at 84 and walk him, and I get emotional. Like,
Mm.
and I did a million mushroom ceremonies and years of talk therapy and never, ever was able to get to that core seed
Yeah.
in a way where I was coherent in my body and guiding myself with the support of the practitioner, right?
Mm. Mhm.
So, in other words, anything that I offer is through my lived experience. If this hasn't worked for me, if this hasn't worked through me, then I don't study it or teach it.
Mm.
And I've been doing intuitive healing work and tarot readings for years, because one of the gifts of my breakdown and breakthrough was that I was able to hone in this intuitive lens that I've always had since a
Mhm.
child. And I think the hypersensitivity that led to me becoming an alcoholic, you know, and self-medicating with alcohol, this very vulnerable, open lens,
Mm.
and needing to close it a little bit because it was too overwhelming. And through my path, I realized this intuitive gift. And so I've been sharing that with people, but lately been feeling like it needs a three-dimensional container.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine a more loving and open and generous container than that of somatic experiencing, and also the ancestral and indigenous nature of it, which
Mm.
goes right into my you know my vessel and my offerings as a woman of color and a bicultural Latinx practitioner. I
Mm.
want to bring it back to the roots because somatic experiencing is ancient.
Mm. Well, oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing so much of that. And we share so much of a similar path and through our lens of healing and coming back home to the foundation, going
Mhm.
through the spiritual route and chanting and meditation and yoga and all of these things, and then going up into the mind with the talk therapy and all of these other things, and then finally coming back to, oh shit, there's this whole other element. my body my body, and similar to you, it was like literally from here down, the only thing that I was used to feeling was pain and chronic pain. And I didn't know that I had an ability to orient myself to something else. And so through that work of, as you said, taking the red pill or the blue pill, it's like, man, I've taken so many of each, all the pills all the time, but then coming into this leg of true embodiment, and offering things that are embodied to a point that it feels foundational to teach them to others and to help guide others through that element. So something similar as well through the work that I was doing prior to this, prior to SE and attachment therapy, I always felt that there was a missing piece and I couldn't quite explain it. I was like, oh my God, what is this? Like, there's a depth here that I'm not touching on that is not allowing for folks. And I didn't have the language for it at the time, didn't know about nervous system regulation. Good Lord. Had I known about all this stuff, a decade ago, especially through Medicine Mandala, it would have probably been. So reflection, thinking about those moments and our time in ceremony together and how it really like blew the lid off of so many things. When I think back now, to moments when we were sharing in circle and the bigness of what we were doing, I would go into freeze. And I didn't have that language. I'm like, okay, I'm passionate about all of these things, but when it comes to my turn to share, my body is completely overwhelmed. And suddenly I have nothing, or I felt I had nothing to contribute, which led to shame and not feeling okay enough to be vulnerable because safety was missing. Even though we had been together for such a long time, I was a stranger to myself still. Yeah. And so I'm just really enjoying hearing you reflect on those times as well and how this is woven into what you provide for community. Like, I know your work is so full of like ritual and working with plants, community and circle, yoga and gatherings, like intuitive healing sessions. Recently, I learned of an offering that I didn't know much about prior, but I'd love for you to just kind of walk us through it, but called Tea with the Grandmothers. I mean, even just that name feels to me like soft butter on warm bread.
I love that.
Thank you.
Yes, that's really beautiful. That offering was born from my reckoning with embodiment. One of my earliest sort of processes when I started to come into my body and inhabit my body, not my mind and intellect. It's always been intellectual mind. I mean, I'm a double Gemini in Vedic astrology, so very mercurial, very intellectual. And when I decided and realized simultaneously that and it's funny because I've been a yoga teacher since 2017. So it's also such a, I needed the yoga to feel like I was a human.
That's right.
And so around 2018, actually shortly after Mandala closed, I started to really reconnect to my Mexican ancestry in a deep way. I mean, I was raised Mexican. I was raised 20 minutes from the Mexican border. I was raised speaking native fluent Spanish. So it's not like I was reconnecting because I never connected. I was connecting deeper. Yes. I believe, I feel strongly, as wacky as it might sound to others, I feel like my grandmothers from the other side of the veil heard the prayer. And to them is an answered prayer. Our granddaughter wants to embody. Please embody in the ways that we could never.
Yeah.
And so I started to hear these stirrings. And I was very, very close to my maternal grandmother, who died when I was pregnant with my second daughter 12 years ago. So it's been a while without her, but she was like my other mother. And so she has been the voice of this reclamation of not just my embodiment, but hers and theirs. And going back to the root of the land that we come from, going back to my mixed Spanish descent, my Afro-Caribbean roots. And so hearing all my grandmothers for all these parts of the world, bringing their medicine into my body, guiding me in, and té con las abuelas, tea with the grandmothers, is this reclamation of the seeds that we are. And holding the container, knowing that it's not all tea and sweetbread. There's also trauma. There's also pain, fragmentation, and other gnarly things. So tea with the grandmothers is holding the space for our reorientation to our roots and our ancestry, and looking at the buffet table of offerings that are possible, and from our sovereignty choosing what and how we reclaim. It's not a free-for-all of the spirit world. It's an intentional, I choose this or I do not choose that.
Yeah. Having choice.
And it's for everyone. It's not just for women of color, it's for everybody. Everybody was indigenous to some land somewhere at some point. Everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so important what you're sharing right now, because I think that this lack of understanding of who we are in an embodied way, and it's not necessarily because some people don't know their ancestors, some people didn't have the ability to have really close relationships with them like I did. Both my grandparents on either side I knew, and one of them is still living and in her 90s. So I've had this ability to connect-ish with her on certain levels, while also not being able to on others because of a variety of things, trauma, separation, distance, all different kinds of things that, you know, come into play when we're dealing with these very sacred teachings of who we are and how we came to be. And I think it was only after, it was probably in 2018, 2019 that I really started to get curious about my own, you know, like, where the hell am I from? Like, how can I have more of a connection to like these Eastern European or Irish teachings, or, you know, what did they sing? What did they do? How did they pray? You know, what did they eat? And kind of the richness that's come from that is more of what I like to call, whispers. You know, as you said, like grandmothers coming in to be like, thank you. You know, it's kind of just like, like, yes, like, let's talk a while. Let's sit. And it doesn't require you to know me in this physical realm. You know, it doesn't necessarily require that kind of connection, but we can still form connections that go beyond our logical understanding, you know, and I don't think that I would have had that same felt sense. Ooh, just about knocked my microphone over. That same felt sense had it not been for somatic experiencing and going kind of deeper into the bodies. You shared so beautifully about your father. And it's like, everything is possible, you know, and it's just going down these different paths and connecting in different ways that maybe we didn't know about. That, as you said, in an hour-long session, it's like, holy shit, I've done this thing that I wasn't able to do previously through all of these other practices and modalities. And how beautiful is that? Because I'm sure all of those other practices and all of those other modalities, as we speak to, brought us to this point. You know, and there's just like this deepening that continues to happen that I'm just in complete awe of every time it happens. You know, it's like, how can we just keep on going deeper, keep on bringing up these things? It's not all, you know, bread and butter. Like I said, how it felt in my body to hear just even the name of Tea with the Grandmothers, but like, how can we sit in the shit with each other in community, you know, and be there as a witnessing presence for each other, And I think that's kind of where we need to go as a society
I
and
agree.
as a community.
Yes, something that has really stayed with me, and I'm not one for the pop spirituality of Instagram
Mm.
at all, but there was a quote meme, I don't know what you call them, grid thing that said that said something, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's essentially it said something like, it is violent to keep imposing self-care on folks who what they actually need is community care.
Mm.
And that is so spot on. I think we have individualized enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've carried enough that witnessing, that reflecting, I think is what will actually shift the entire timeline in the way that is necessary, which as we stand today, we need a major shift. And that's not to say that self-responsibility is not there or self-accountability isn't there. Of course they're there, but we bring those to our seat in the circle.
Yeah.
Enough with the individualized, ego driven, my healing's for me.
Yeah.
I do this to feel good for me. Let's expand that.
Yeah.
We must expand that.
Yeah. We have to expand that. And I think that, you know, it of course always starts with the individual because in order to, you know, I don't know, I don't even know how to word this. Let's see if I can make it out in a coherent way, but in order to be able to show up and be that kind of that presence in circle in a way that feels safe, like for me internally, requires, usually in my experience, a certain amount of internal regulation.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's not to say that we don't show up as we are in any given moment, because of course there's that. That's not what I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to feel safe enough to let others hold us.
Absolutely.
To feel okay enough to look into someone else's eyes, to feel okay enough to hold someone else's hand. Just, yeah, it requires a certain amount of curiosity about the other. And like
Absolutely.
that goes beyond what we feel individually. But when we're traumatized, so much of our time can be spent just trying to caretake for ourselves. It's hard to even see past what's happening right in front of us, to widen and broaden that lens.
Absolutely. And that's why I think SC is so powerful, because having the framework of SC, of understanding dysregulation, something that's simple, has allowed me to relate to myself and others. My partner and I are raising 4 kids together.
Yeah, you are.
four girls between the ages of 2 and 14.
Yeah.
And just the simple concept of dysregulation as a parent is a game changer. I can see when I'm dysregulated. I can see when my kid's dysregulated. I can see when my partner's dysregulated. And even just that simple framework of regulation allows for so much compassion and awareness. Like, oh, I'm raising my voice. I'm dysregulated right now.
Yeah.
She's crying for no reason. She's dysregulated. Let's co-regulate. Let's ground. Let's breathe.
Yeah.
And so having these words that encompass these complexities has also allowed me to get out of my trauma mind.
Yes.
So that I can broaden and be
hallelujah.
Right. And be present for the needs of myself and others.
Yeah.
Because when we're in trauma, we're just wanting to meet our immediate needs.
That's right. Yeah.
And sometimes that comes off as selfishness. I think this
Yeah.
influx of narcissism, I keep hearing that word.
I know.
Everybody's a narcissist these
Right.
days. And I think it's because this severe trauma that we share individually and collectively is making it so I must meet my immediate needs and fuck the rest. And that is a survival strategy.
That's right. And so many
A very
people are in
toxic
that.
one.
Yes, exactly. It's like if we think about just collectively what's happening all around us, and I'm not just talking about all the shit too. And I made a post about this the other day. It's not about, just all love and light and paying attention to the good that's happening, but our systems need that as well to be able to live life and to come out of the trauma vortex, because we're not helping anyone else if we're meeting everybody in the trauma vortex. And sometimes it's inevitable and sometimes it's impossible not to. I'm not saying that that doesn't happen. Of course it does, but more times than not, what's missing from that equation is the body and like how present and how much space we can hold for ourselves while orienting to, holy shit, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of pain. Wow. I need to go hold myself in my bedroom. I need to go and spend time with my partner right now. I need to fucking sit down with my children and hug them and just allow that sense of like happiness and joy and peace and gratitude to flow through my body just as much as the other stuff, because so often we can just get caught in this cycle of just feeding into the intensity. I've been there, doom scrolling. Anyone else? You're just like, oh,
Totally.
oh my God, I need to know now, see this video. No, you don't. No, you don't. Fucking put your phone down and go and hug a tree, and I'm saying that very lightly because I understand that there's a lot happening, but the biology of it is that. So it doesn't mean that we're looking away to disconnect. We're looking away to connect, looking in a different direction rather than looking away. So yeah, curious to hear your thoughts on that as well.
I love this conversation and it's so relevant. I've been a social justice warrior since I could talk.
Yeah.
It's an innate part of me to see that there are all kinds of us and why not, right?
And why not? Yeah.
And why not? And that's very natural to me. And I come from a family of radical revolutionary politicians. So it's in my blood. And I, for a long time, was constantly in opposition, constantly fighting the good fight in opposition.
Yeah.
And recently, a few of my friends made me realize that our joy, especially as women of color, children of immigrants, call it what you will, our joy is also opposition. My kids' joy is also opposition. My health, my vitality, my mental health is opposition. Yeah. So to live congruently to our integrity is opposition to a structure and system that wants to squash us and wants to separate us.
Yeah.
So to keep my eyes peeled and my feet on the ground and my heart open, I feel at this moment is the most fucking anarchist punk rock thing I could possibly be doing. Because I won't hate more. I won't separate more. I refuse to feed the beast what it wants.
That's right.
Instead, I'm like, oh, you poor baby, you need SC, you need some tea, you need to take a nap. Have some bone broth.
My God, I feel the same way. Bake some bread. Let's go. Get a cozy blanket. Come on. Let's cuddle.
So, and that's not to say that I'm not
Yeah.
angry. That's not
Yeah.
to say that there isn't this sacred rage that could
Mm-hmm.
burn the whole thing down,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
But there's also this enormous faith, this enormous hope that I feel even as I see atrocity. I can still say, hold on a second, like I can still feel something good here. We're not done yet. It's
Yeah.
not over. I really think that we're all okay in the end. So if it's not okay, it's not the end.
That's right. Oh
Those
my
aren't my
God.
words.
I love
Those
those
aren't my
words.
words. Those aren't my words.
I feel
I
like
don't
I
know who
just
said
heard that
that, but it
quote.
wasn't me. Yeah, those aren't my words, but I do believe that. I do feel that.
I feel that
We'll have
too.
to look it up.
We're gonna
Yeah.
have to look that up because I swear to God, it's been like I just heard that a couple of days ago. I was like, yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The importance of, oh man, happiness and joy as opposition. The feelings that come up when I even hear those words are like revolutionary, in a way,
Mm-hmm.
because it's against everything that the forces that be want to strip from us, our humanity,
Yes.
our ability to just, once we take it all away, there is a human standing in front of me, and that human has family, has to
Mm-hmm.
provide shelter and food and care. And when we lose that, that's when things start to get really bad. That sense of, I'm not alone, I'm connected to everything else that is here today. And I don't feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's esoteric talk. I don't feel like that's woo woo. And especially through working with so many different nervous systems, it's like, hey, yo, like, do you know that even before someone walks into a room, our nervous systems are having a whole conversation, a
Mm.
whole fucking conversation. Our
Mm-hmm.
bodies are brilliant and we're wired for that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Through my studies with attachment, what you speak to through being a parent, it's like right now, through your children and just like noticing the dysregulation, noticing the cry, not reacting in an angry way, like you're not going to yell at a crying child. Some people do, right? Because like that's what's going through their systems. That's what they knew.
Right.
Like
Right.
my dad was a yeller. And so I grew up with that. And I remember, I'm just going to rant a little bit on this because it's so fascinating to me. I remember that I just, again, thought it was normal. So I'm going to use this example. My husband would like spill something on the floor. And right away I'd be like, oh, what the fuck, Tim? Like get angry at him. And he's like, why are you angry about this? Like I just made a mistake. And it took like many times of, Tim pointing it out, like, Lisa, like, why do you get so angry with this? Before I realized, and when I was doing the deep work with SE and some attachment stuff, I was like, oh my God, like we used to get in trouble for this kind of stuff. And like,
Mm.
so now I'm doing it too. So one thing that I did, which I mean, I invite y'all to try this on, it's quite hilarious, is that I told my husband, I'm like, hey, when I start to like go off on this, call me by my father's name.
Oh gosh. I have a funny short story about that. I come from a family of yellers also, and it's cultural in part, like stereotyping, some
Mm,
any Mexicans listening might understand is that there is like a loudness to our voice
yeah.
naturally.
Yeah.
But there is also the yelling aspect of my parents, and
Yes.
particularly my dad, and my mom has been with him for so long that she's taken that one on completely.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I reacted like my mother recently in my to my teen and preteen daughters, and these kids are so like zoomed in.
Right.
And I said, I acted like Oma. I said, I acted like Oma, and I don't really want to act like her. So if you notice me acting like that, can you like remind me? Oh, girl. Now, if I pull it, they're like, you're acting like Oma right now. And it helps, but it's so annoying in that moment, right?
Of course.
But those things are so hard to break. It's so hard. That's probably one of the biggest challenges of being a parent that I'm in right now, because my kids are getting older. It's so easy to parent a toddler. It's so easy to love a baby,
right.
but when you have a kid that's challenging you, that has their own identity, their own personality, I start to notice myself reacting like my mom
That's right.
in the same ways that I hated.
I know. I know.
And it's just so ingrained.
That's right.
So ingrained.
Yeah. And so, and I would say, you know, those things that I hated about the way that like I was treated, and love you, Pops. Again, like there's no, I don't bring any of this up to like shame my parents, obviously. It's like, again, I truly believe we're doing what we've learned to do, you know, and until we challenge it, you know, it is what it is. So I come at this with a lot of compassion, knowing that like these things are, again, like you said, hard to break, hard habits, hard things, hard ingrained things. And so, and along with that too, there's a certain, a lot of unconsciousness around it. So even though I can know that that's like a pattern, my brain is like, but I don't know how to fix that. Like that is just how we all operate, you know, and this, and the same can be true for trauma and like other relationship injuries, until there's like an actual acknowledgement. And again, like for me, it was like a felt sense. Like there was this one moment in time when I finally got it. So with like the experience you had with your dad, it's like all of a sudden, you know, something's healed, and it's like, there's no need to go back to that aspect anymore. You know, it's like this domino has made other things kind of just like simmer away. So,
yes. And I think it's also beautiful to acknowledge the domino effect in the other direction. For example, my mom and dad are doing better by me and my sister than their parents did for them.
100%. Yeah.
And I pray that I do better by my daughters, right? So it's not, my parents are amazing, right? It's not and see, like it took time to get to that, to be able to say that and mean it. Because for so long, it's like only seeing and resenting what wasn't perfect.
That's right.
But now, you know, I'm 37. I have my own kids. They're growing up. I'm seeing how hard it is to parent, how easy it is to judge it. But like, I don't know anyone more humble than the parent of a teenager. You know, if you haven't raised a teenager, don't tell me anything about how to raise my kids, you know, because well, I'll say this. If you're raising free-spirited, sovereign teenagers that aren't afraid of their voice. Yeah. And that's what I wanted, right? I trained my daughters to speak their minds.
That's right.
And now I get to up level with that.
Yeah. And honestly, Lunita, I believe that that's the point. Like as hard as it is, I feel like we're supposed to, I guess, maybe outgrow our parents in certain ways, right? Like otherwise, what the fuck are we doing? What the fuck are we doing if we're not like growing and like learning and becoming wise about the things that hurt? Then like kind of what's the point is the way that I think about it.
Absolutely. I hope my daughters are better mothers than I was or am. I hope my daughters are better human beings than I am. Like, please evolve beyond me. Yeah. Please heal my mishaps for yourself. By all means, outdo me in every way.
Yeah, please outdo me. Please. I was reading this quote the other day, and I thought of you, as I often do with many of my friends who are mothers of living children. But that's another topic for another day. But it goes like this: We can trust that if we or our parents had more support while raising us, physical, emotional, financial, educational, more connection to family, community, and access to conscious medical care, that we and they could have thrived in the role.
Absolutely.
And so I think about this when I think about you and your work with social justice, and, you know, just how many people just like don't have basic needs, whether that be like any of the things that I just mentioned, and how crucial, absolutely fundamental it is to have those things. And then I think the opposite to that, like, holy shit, it's surprising that any of us are still here with all of the with the sheer amount that we didn't have of those elements, you know. And I know that you've been speaking to a few times, or at least I've seen a few posts of yours where, you know, you're navigating life after the birth of your last baby, you know, and I know you underwent this beautiful and challenging rebirth of yourself. And so just wondering how that plays a role into the work that you're offering now.
Oh gosh.
It's a big one. It's a big one.
Yeah, I'm still growing into her. You know, I'm still, I think if you ask me this in 5 years, I'll be able to synthesize a neat answer. I'm still in discovery. You know, it's like, even though I've been a spiritual being always, even though I've been soft and sensitive always, I created these exceptional identities, these exceptional, as you know, in SE, protectors. Exceptional. I mean, these were skilled. I mean, they were good at keeping me safe and separate.
Yep.
And even in the last 5 years that I've embarked on, like you said, deepening, right? Like I was a full-time yoga teacher offering spiritual mentorship and intuitive heart sessions, and just going really deep with people, deep with myself, sober, full sobriety, presence, embodiment. Even then, those identities, those protectors were still, they just shape shifted. They just changed how they dressed and what they wore and how they spoke. I mean, they evolved with me, but they were still there. And my new baby, Cielo, she said, no, thank you. I need you to be courageously skinless, courageously open. And it is very hard to be a human in this world. I don't think to be a human in general. I think being a human is beautiful and yummy. In this world, with the expectations of us and the way we treat each other, it's very hard to be this subtle and sensitive. And I think SC has been my saving grace in titrating, you know, how much or how little, with who and with what.
That's right.
I open, and it's still not perfect because I don't have my guardrail. There's no more guardrail. There's no more false ego. I still have an ego, obviously, but it's not as thick. It's not as like curated. It's still there, obviously. I still have one. I'm not saying I'm egoless. I'm saying I don't have 50 protector identities in front of me.
That's right.
I am more permeable now. And to answer your question, I can connect to the pain of others, the suffering of others. My heart is a channel of connection to another heart fully. And that's beautiful and hard at the same time.
Yeah.
And that requires me to be very self-governing, have boundaries, work on attachment style, it's like it requires so much work on this side of the fence. But in short, I think what's happening, because I'm still in it, is that I have become me more fully. And me is a very sensitive, feeling person. And I think that helps people open in my presence, open in session, because like you said, that humanity is intact.
Yeah.
I've sat with therapists before that might have PhDs and might have written a book, but they're a machine. They're a voice box for the Western model of therapy.
Yeah.
They might know how to help me workshop a fight I had with my boyfriend.
Yeah.
But there isn't that invisible, unseen thread of connection that is healing in and of itself. That sacred witness. That just that, like just the few times that I was witness for the first time were life-changing.
Yeah. And I mean, for so many folks, you know, we don't have that. You know, there might have never been a time in our lives where we've actually had someone be with us in that kind of presence, in that kind of therapeutic presence, in that kind of witnessing, you know, which ultimately leads to, as you spoke of, this like acceptance of what is. So at least that's what I found through my journey with SE and all the other practices. It's like I'm far more accepting of what is, and what that leads to is presence. And healing happens in presence. Healing happens in the now with you and me right here in this moment. And I think that was something that I never understood internally before SE, was like, I am not who I have been. You know, it takes out the I am trauma to my body. I have experienced trauma. It's like that kind of thing, right? I am not fawning. I am someone who has experienced, or someone who fawns, right? It's like all of these things. It's like it's allowed some separation in order for there to be some presence. And so it's not all the experiences aren't just like mushing together and overwhelming me and overwhelming people in general. And so I love that you called that forward. And I mean, what a better, I don't know of a better way than to like bring that presence into a child's life, into a teenager's life, into, you know, like that's it. That's the juice. That's generational healing. You know, how it comes to the forefront, you know, and being able to witness someone else without going into, and that's still going to happen sometimes depending on like what life has brought to us. Sometimes we get swept away, and that's just like, fuck it, it's part of being human, you know. But the times that I experience that now are like fewer and further in between.
Right. Yes, I noticed this ability to see even challenging people in my life. The ability to see the person beyond their actions and responses and impulses. And I think that's really what being a heart-centered person is. I don't think it's love and light and woo,
Oh,
like
hell no.
Right. Like saying the right words is
No.
bullshit. It's
Yeah,
bullshit. It's holding people, seeing people as another heart, another you,
that's right.
without bypassing.
Yeah.
This see it's nebulous to talk like this because there's also like you're not going to let people walk all over you. There's also people who
Yeah.
are harmful.
Of
Yes,
course. No.
yes, of course.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like I said, a few minutes ago when you asked me about the social justice thing, it's like it all comes back to that. It all comes back to heart and kindness, not
Yeah.
being nice. I'm not that nice,
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah. Me either,
but I
really.
am kind. I
Yeah.
am, yeah, like I don't have that. I never had that social construct of like, oh hi, oh my
Mm,
god, it's so good to see you. Like what nice is. I
hmm.
never learned that,
Yeah.
you know? And it's funny because my kids aren't like that. And I recently realized in witnessing my older daughters with strangers, especially strangers who they don't like or give them weird
Hmm.
vibes, they're very standoffish. They'll say
Yeah.
hi and that's all you're going to get.
That's
They
right.
don't have that part of them that fawns,
That's right.
that they don't have that part of them that like acts a certain way because that's socially acceptable. I
Yeah.
didn't teach them that because I never had that.
Hmm.
I am not really like that. And so it's good and bad because sometimes I wish they were a little more like mushy so that I can look so that I can look good, you know?
You
But
looking good anyway.
but it was funny to see that like, oh
Mm,
shit, like they're not fake,
that's right.
you know? And
Yeah.
so the whole reason I brought that up is to say, but they're both good people. They
Yeah.
both have kind hearts.
Hmm.
So I don't need all the fake niceness. I
Yeah.
need people, or I want people around me who can connect to the heart.
Yeah.
And that takes so much less bullshit
That's what
on
I
the
mean.
table.
Totally. I'm thinking, I was just about to say, you know, if anything, I have way stronger boundaries. If anything, I can smell way more bullshit than ever before
Same,
and
same,
trust that and not
same.
make excuses like, oh, but they're just, having a bad, like, whatever it is. I can trust my instinct way more now that there's not so much, what did you call it before? Like a thick armor. It's more
Mm,
flexible. It's more
yes,
it's more porous, but it's strong. Okay,
exactly.
don't
That's
mistake me for being a
yes.
weakling, yo. That's a mistake.
No, that is
Yeah,
a beautiful, it is porous, but infallible. Like you
that's
cannot
right.
break it. And,
Yeah.
and and it's like I've never been more pulpy and tender, but I've never been more strong
Mm-hmm.
in my convictions, you know? Like
Yeah,
just like I can call bullshit from a mile away, I can also see when someone good is acting bad.
that's right.
So
Yes,
it's both, you
it's
know what I
both.
mean? Like
Yeah,
there's people close to me who are incredible people who sometimes act like complete assholes because of their pain.
that's
And so
right.
I can also see that. And I can also see the person who says all the right things, but is completely full of shit.
Oh my God.
So,
And oh, yeah. Yep. Sorry, keep going. Yes to all that.
no, but that's all. Like, it's like it
Yeah,
goes both ways. Like, we're used to calling out the bullshit meter, but what about the one who is actually an incredible being who just comes off the whole wrong ass way,
yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah, I do have more capacity to read between the lines for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
But it's also tender, because I do notice, and there's some dynamics I could use as an example, but I won't because they're personal and
Mm-hmm.
not my place to speak of. But it is also tender because I see the opportunity for healing and growth,
Yeah,
but everybody has to consent.
that's right. Yeah.
It's not my business. So also remembering that and stepping back and saying, okay, You can only meet me as far as you've gone. And
Yeah.
I
And
have to be, and I have to respect that.
that's right. And that's boundaries too. Like I remember a
Mhm.
time where I'm like, I got you. Like you need some healing. Like, come on. You just need to do this, and this. And oh my God, my poor friends and family, just like, oh, Lisa. Right. So that's like a form
Yeah.
of boundaries too. You experience them internally. So then you get much better at respecting other people's boundaries too. You're not like inserting your shit where it doesn't belong unless
Yeah.
it's mutual and there's an agreement to come together in that way, So I really, yeah, even just reflecting on that, my God, all the times that
Mhm.
that was present, and it just doesn't lead to more connection,
It doesn't. And it gets
no,
tricky too. A lot of
tricky.
us who have the healer archetype in our soul chart
Yeah.
might have had a desire to experience our own healing by seeing ourselves as the healer.
Mm.
And I'm not really about that right now. And I feel like
Uh-uh.
that's a big element of growth too, is like when people project that onto me, it doesn't feel good anymore because I'm
Yeah.
like, no, actually, I'm just a mirror. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's my current stance.
Yeah.
And I reserve the right to change my mind. But
That's right.
my current stance is like I'm just a mirror. Like if you see me in session and all you see is, oh, she's so healing and this, or you're just seeing your own
Mm.
capacity to
Yeah.
be that. If
Yeah.
you see me and all you see is, I don't know, some weirdo, well then maybe I'm touching up on something in you that's a weirdo.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
really feel right now that the way that my energy is interplaying is kind of like chipping on the edge. Like
Mm-hmm.
if you consent to be in a space with me, I might push the edge for you a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's whatever you want it to be.
Totally. And
And I have to move out of the way.
yeah. And I mean, that's the whole, not the whole SE stees, but it's like, you know, there still does have to be a certain amount of the trigger present to be able to,
Right.
titrate between, so we're not going in like, let's go to the biggest wound that you have and just like blow it open. No, like been there, done that. I've done that with like plant medicine. I've done that with breath
Yeah.
work in times where that's not what my body was needing, but I thought that's what my body was needing, and there's a time and a place for everything. And those were not, for me, the things that really assisted me. I mean, I shouldn't even say that. That's not the wording I want to use. They assisted me, but it was in a way of like revealing more activation and more,
Mm.
just more of the things that I already knew. I needed to experience something I didn't know, peace and
Yeah.
presence within, and that
Mm.
does require this very beautiful way of weaving in to people's edges.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, can we sit there with that way that you feel jealous? Like, where is that?
Mm.
Can we see what's there? Is that comfortable? Is that manageable? And it's gentle, but it's still like it's the fierce mother. It's like, I'm gonna hold you in this shit because
Yeah.
like we all experience these things. Like there's nothing
Yeah.
shameful about these states.
Yeah.
The only difference between them is your perception of them and how your body recognizes them,
Yep. I
So
think I think
yeah,
that's another layer of the question you asked me of like what happened to me after giving birth. And it's another
yeah,
thing is like I saw my mental health in a way that I'd never seen it,
yeah,
where I was uncomfortable being alone. I was,
mm,
driving gave me anxiety. I was
yeah,
in this, my trauma was so kicked up
yeah.
in a way that I couldn't recognize myself. And what that did was it expanded my edges of containment
Mm-hmm.
so much so that I could sit in another person who's completely fucking trauma spun and know what that tastes like, know what
Mm-hmm.
that feels like.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in a therapist who's had a perfect fucking life.
Ow.
I want a therapist who has gone to the edge of their edge and been like, I made it.
Yeah. Here.
I survived. Here are my notes.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how I survived.
Yeah.
Here's what I learned.
Yeah.
It increased my capacity by taking me to my edge. That's probably a more succinct response to everything I said before.
Yeah.
It increased my capacity
Yeah.
to be with how hard it can be.
Yeah. And make no mistake, it's hard.
It's really hard.
It's hard.
It's hard.
Oh God. God, it's hard. But it's also so good when we create and tend to and make space for more. Like, man, it feels so different to live in a body that's not that's not rigid to everything, that's not like impenetrable. Is that even a word? I don't even know if I said that right, but
I think it is. I think it is a word.
Yeah. And so it's just allowed for this whole other experience of, like you said, being able to hold people, being able to hold ourselves in this like beautiful containment, to know what's for us, to know when, folks are saying one thing, but their actions aren't meeting up. And even though that's still confusing sometimes and hurtful, it doesn't mean like you don't feel anything. You're like, oh yeah, this one friend did this. And I just like, I did SE or like I have attachment training, so I don't feel pain. No, it's more about recognizing that you can choose to still be in that situation. Like it's not necessarily an addiction to be there. And these things just become really obvious. And that doesn't mean they're not still painful, but then you have choice about what you can and want to do about them.
Yeah, that choice I think that choice and awareness can bring the difficulty of a relationship from toxic trauma bond codependency to like spiritual food. Like
that's right.
If I'm aware and I have tools to work through things with my partner, I'm actually deepening my spirituality. 100%. I'm deepening my evolution.
Yeah.
But if I'm not aware and I'm just repeating patterns and it's just a toxic, whatever. And so I think those two are, and I'm learning this, I'm in the first relationship I've been in where I feel like I'm actually in a shared container with someone in a real way. And it's hard.
Yeah.
And I love the things you've shared about relationship. Like every single one has been so helpful to me navigating this new frontier of like, no, we're not going to be codependent. We're not going to feed into each other's toxic bullshit. We can heal together.
Yeah.
And that is a whole different game.
Yeah. It's a different ball game when the choice is to heal together rather than to like allow everything that's happened to us to stand in the way of our intimacy. And like being someone who has been in partnership for, over 12 years now, we've had our share of hard,
I can imagine.
We've had our share of, even during the medicine mandala, right? Like I was like in a really low like point in my life where the trauma was just so loud. Nothing felt safe. Like, oh my God. And the people who love us get to bear witness to that, and some folks might say like, oh man, it's so nice that you had someone. Hell no. At that time, I didn't want to be witnessed.
Yeah.
In my worst, I didn't want someone to like see me, but ultimately that is what freed me.
Exactly. And like, I was going to say
fuck.
That's such a tendril of this is like, I've been able to unravel, I think, because I've had other opportunities to unravel. Like I've tugged on the cord many times.
Yeah.
I think I was finally able to unravel when I wasn't even asking for it.
Yeah.
Because I had the container of the relationship that I currently have.
That's right.
To unravel.
Yeah.
And he has seen it all. And here we are, you know? I really feel that I was able to fall apart because I had a safety net.
Yeah.
Even though that was never an agreement. I didn't say, hey, on Wednesday, I'm going to go down the deep end. No, it just happened.
That's right. And how, you know, the people in our life, our partners, come to the table says so much about whether or not we can completely do that or not, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like you said, the body, the system's intelligent. It's not going to unravel where we can't be safe unraveling.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that, you know, these skills, this like nervous system regulation and somatic skills, they deepen our relationship. Like we become shaman to our bodies is how I want to language it. We become able to have this conversation of kind of two spirits coming together, right? The mind, the body, the spirit, in a way that's like for our best interest, with our best interests in mind. And that perhaps is one of the most beautiful things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Because I do notice my body, my mind and spirit often or fairly often want different things.
Yeah.
And finding a safe place for it all.
Finding a safe place for it all. that could just be the tagline of life. Finding a safe space for it all.
And it's also not even that safe. Like that's the other thing. And that's like the joke after, like the subtext and PS, this world's not safe and safety is not promised.
That's right.
Like, oh God.
Oh God, all of it. Well, I absolutely love everything that we've touched on today. I want to thank you, Lunita, for just being such a presence in my life and for coming on here. Connecting with you has been wonderful, eye-opening, expansive. And I want you to tell people where they can find you, where they can go to be part of your world. I'll also put links in the show notes, but if you could just speak to that as well, it'd be awesome.
Thank you. I'm based in San Diego, California. I'm a San Diego native. I offer a remote private sessions and private yoga sessions. And I also teach public yoga in San Diego as well. You can find all of my work at omluna.org. That's OMLUNA, omluna.org. And I'm also on Instagram at Lunita Yoga. And I offer my work remotely and also in person.
Thank you so much, friend. I adore you. You're a gift. Thank you.
I adore you too. Thank you for the invitation and this beautiful conversation. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And bye for now.
Bye for now.
As always, thank you so much for listening. Life is busy, so it means even more to me that you are here. Listen, we've got so many great episodes coming up, so please make sure that you follow along on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you are listening. And if you appreciate these episodes, please do us a favor and leave a review and share the show with anyone you think this episode would benefit. See you again next week. Bye for now.